Hey everyone, Geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We are right now in the midst of a G1 geomagnetic storm that kind of came out of nowhere. The solar wind suddenly strengthened and also flipped negative, meaning that there's a strong connection right now between the magnetic field of the solar wind and Earth's magnetic field. And while this is occurring, we have the sun pushing out a bunch of new sunspots. Each of these a little magnetic eddy or vortex on the surface of the sun. So sunspots are climbing back to 200. Right now they're over 190 and they're kind of defying the normal rhythmic trend that sunspots have. So it really does look like this second peak in solar activity for solar cycle 25 maximum is going to happen this fall, which is what we've been forecasting on the channel now for quite a few months. I base that off of a bunch of different data points and also a super reliable intuition and gut feeling. So we'll see how long-lived this is, but it was really sudden 36 hours ago, just sunspots coming out, and we have this G1 geomagnetic storm right now. Also, at the end of the video, we'll be doing a cosmic connection meditation, a sound healing. So if you'd like to participate, then watch till the end. There's also going to be a timestamp that you can click to go right there. That'll be ad-free. So let us look at these magnetic fluctuations that are occurring right now. It's pretty significant. This is a G1 storm, though some of the smaller indices actually bumped up to G2. So the scale rating goes to 5, 1 to 5. 1 is a minor storm, 2 is a moderate storm, 3 is strong, 4 is severe, 5 is extreme. This is not an extreme storm. The last G5 storm that we had was May 2024, like definitively, because that was KP index of 9 for a long duration. That's a different scale, but we basically went off the charts. And then we basically had like a G5 minus storm. So like nearly an extreme storm actually last October, so nearly a year from a year ago right now. But this is what we got right now. We're looking at the world map. We're looking at the changes to Earth's magnetic field strength. And here we have our legend. So this is measured in nanotesla. B is what they use, the symbol for magnetic field. So if you're ever wondering what like delta B means, that means change in the total magnetic field. We see that this goes up to 400 nanotesla, but during a geomagnetic storm, that can actually go beyond that. You can get 1,000 nanotesla swings, 2,000 nanotesla swings, 3,000 nanotesla swings if it's like a really crazy storm, like a Carrington event, something like that, a super flare. Who knows what the heck that thing would do to the Earth. But this is all in context of Earth's total magnetic field strength, which is about 23,000 nanotesla in strength right here in this region, the South Atlantic anomaly. That's the lowest, weakest point in Earth's magnetic field, and then strongest up in the polar region. So it's about 67,000 nanotesla right here, and it's in the high 50s and low 60s up in the northern hemisphere. So you do a 1,000 nanotesla swing. On top of that, it's effectively like a big wave, like a hurricane passing over the ocean. The ocean is Earth's total magnetic field strength. The hurricane is the disruptions up top. And the normal diurnal variations, 24-hour variations that occur with Earth's magnetic field, because there's always these subtle fluctuations occurring due to solar radiation hitting the Earth, creating these electric currents in the ionosphere, which then create these magnetic fields, these diurnal rhythms. Those are like 40, 50 nanotesla in strength. So you can see it all kind of scales up by 10. So this is quite a bit stronger than the normal diurnal variations. The reason why I mentioned that is that if we're in a period for a long time where there's no geomagnetic storms, and then all of a sudden, boom, we get one, especially if it's kind of something you weren't expecting, like you watch the channel a lot, you know what to expect. Well, this one kind of came out of nowhere. That can definitely give the biology a little bit of a shock. It really connects to the circadian rhythm and guides the circadian rhythm. And you throw that off, then everything kind of gets thrown off. It's really about the hypothalamus, which is that part of the brain that helps guide hormone secretion and balances out your metabolism. And it's one of the most important structures in the brain in terms of maintaining homeostasis. So these sort of events can throw that into disarray, and your body will get shifted towards a sympathetic state and want to regain equilibrium. And as a result, common symptoms may be like a headache or fatigue. You're just tired, maybe even like joint pain. Depends on your own individual health and wellness. A geomagnetic storm often though, like at least for me, more often than these like the headache symptoms, it's more so like I get fired up and I'm ready to go. So there is a kind of a split and a spectrum in terms of how you can respond to this. And some people really just kind of shrug it off and they may need a G5 storm to feel anything. This is just a G1 storm kind of going to G2. So these are the magnetic fluctuations. Again, you see them strongest in the polar regions there. So if you're in like these mid-latitude or equatorial zones, these magnetic field swings aren't that much, but they are more than the normal diurnal variations. Look at this bubble right there. That's about 150 nanotesla. So it's not insignificant compared to the normal day-to-day. Now, another factor to keep in mind in regards to this is that the Earth is more charged up as a result of all these solar flares that we've been having. So we just had the strongest solar flare in 3 months, a 6.4 M-class flare. We may see that on the video. It's very brief, but we may see a flash in this video. It depends on the timing and everything. But look at all the activity coming from this region as these new sunspots emerge and new flux is being pushed out of the sun. Effectively, what's happening is you get this bundle of plasma and magnetic fields just pushing out of the sun, creating these sunspots, these little vortices. And the magnetic field around these vortices is very, very strong. It can be thousands of Gauss, which is a different measure of the magnetic field as compared to like Tesla's, okay? But thousands of Gauss. Earth's magnetic field, for reference, is 0.23 to 0.67 Gauss, which is equating to 23,000 to 67,000 nanotesla. So you can see just how strong the magnetic field in these select regions is in comparison to like Earth's magnetic field, Jupiter's magnetic field, Saturn, the other gas giants, Mercury. Mercury's 1/100th the strength of Earth's magnetic field. So this is the big heavyweight in our solar system in terms of energy and light output, in terms of the electric field it generates, the magnetic field, and that's why it affects everything in our solar system. It's as simple as that. It creates a heliosphere that expands out about 100 astronomical units. All the planets are within the heliosphere, and that creates the foundational magnetic and electric field framework that everything else sits on top of. And so that's why there's a whole field of heliobiology that goes back hundreds of years, recognizing how the sun impacts us, not only biologically, but also societally. So the other thing to keep in mind as we go into this second peak of activity, that's at least what is happening right now. We'll see how long this continues. I think it's going to continue to ramp up because of all these comets in the inner solar system, and also because of interstellar object 3I Atlas and a few other reasons as well. We often see double peaks in activity. But as that double peak continues, not only are these biological effects probably going to ramp up, one of the most well-known and serious are cardiovascular issues, especially if you have a cardiovascular problem. That can be serious. They're linked, you know, solar storm impacts, geomagnetic storms are linked to like infarctions and heart attacks and strokes and stuff with very sensitive populations, elderly people and more. It's something I wouldn't like lose sleep over, but it's statistically relevant. But also societally. So we can see these effects at the individual level, kind of with our mind and our consciousness, but also definitely it forms these rhythms and trends at the collective level. I can actually show a graphic for that. Let me pull that up because this is useful to see. So this, I've shown this before, but since we're on the topic right now, I'm going to show again how revolutions, or what they call spontaneous social processes, line up with solar maximum, basically time and time again. Okay, so here is our relationship between solar activity and spontaneous social processes. We have our Wolf number there, y-axis. This effectively is like a measure of sunspots, but over a long time frame. And here we have our axis for our years, going back all the way about 1750. We see the American Revolution there, solar cycle 3, one of the strongest solar cycles ever, and one of the most transformative events for the world. Boom, smack on it. French Revolution, super bloody, right? Crazy what they were doing during the French Revolution, if you know the history, like really absolute madness. Just an ecstatic purge of chaos and blood. that lined up with solar cycle 4, very strong solar cycle. We see all these other things, Russian revolutions, and we see what's been happening recently, collapse of the USSR, Arab Spring. Well, solar cycle 25 is happening right now. That's not on this graphic, but there's a whole bunch of protests and revolutions sweeping across the world on and off. So this is, and it's also linked to warfare. So these are the type of dynamics that we get during these sort of solar maximums, especially big ones. Notice that there's really nothing with these smaller solar max cycles, right? Solar cycle 25 has been a stronger cycle than was expected. It's not anomalously strong, but stronger than expected. They thought we were going to have another solar cycle 24, which was kind of like these guys there. It was stronger than this, but it's been stronger than expected. So expect more of these kind of big events to unfold, and especially kind of near the, like as the maximum phase is coming to a close, because it takes time for that energy to come in and to kind of like percolate through everybody. So that's kind of the deal. When you're pouring water and your French press for your coffee, you don't drink it after 10 seconds. You wait 3 minutes, then you press it, then you drink it. It's the same deal with all this solar energy. It takes some time for it to like infuse in at the individual and societal level, and then these things just spontaneously manifest. There's an increase in synchronicities during solar maximums, a whole bunch of very interesting things, and then it also lines up, and you can look at it also from like a planetary resonance perspective and planetary alignments, and you add in that layer and it gets really dynamic really quickly. Here we can look at our HB30 index for the past 24 hours to see this ramp up in activity. And this is provided by GFC Potsdam. The links are in the video description. And you'll notice that we are in calm, quiet conditions. Things were cool, they were groovy. We were all chilling. We're still chilling, but now with just a little bit more chaos added on top. So here we have this ramping up. It's like you're eating a normal ice cream and now you're having an affogato and you pour an espresso on top. Boom, that's where we are. We even had a value there of 6.33 for 30 minutes. And there is some fluctuation. These recent values get recomputed for a couple hours afterwards. So that might change. But that's a G2 storm right there for 30 minutes, not for 3 hours, which is typically how we measure a longer duration storm. We can go to our 10-day plot to see what's been happening across the past 10 days. And we'll go here for our HB60 index, a 1-hour measure. And you'll see there that we did have this very subtle ramp up, not a geomagnetic storm though, but more active conditions and quiet. And now this is where we are. So this is not anything crazy, but it is kind of out of the blue. We can look at our real-time solar wind here. Then we're going to look at those sunspots growing out of the sun because it's quite wild. But here we have our real-time solar wind. And you see that we just had 6 hours now of G1 storming. If it's yellow, that's a G1 storm. And it's because the solar wind strengthened. This is the magnetic field. Black line, total field strength. Red line, the southward component. So you can take the magnetic field, you can take anything, and split it into 3 vector directions. And it's kind of arbitrary, but whatever. So you can do east, well, you can do basically X, Y, and Z. Z, that vertical one, is the one that we track as it relates to how it connects to Earth's magnetic field, because Earth has a positive Z direction. If this goes negative, which is what we see here when we get this purple kind of shading, when it goes negative, you get a really nice connection, and then this allows the magnetic field to push in further, and a lot of that solar wind gets injected into the magnetosphere and into the plastosphere of the sun. So that's something to be mindful of. And in fact, right now, because it is after the September equinox, we are right now in the Russell-McPherson effect, which means that we have stronger geomagnetic storms than, let's say, during like solstice. So I have another graphic I can pull up here for you on that, on the Russell-McPherson effect. And it's quite interesting how this works because, in fact, right now, this time period of the fall during solar maximum is the period of time where we can expect the strongest geomagnetic storms. You have 2 equinoxes every year, you know, the spring and the fall. Depends on which hemisphere you are in terms of the relation, in terms of the weather and the climate. But this September equinox consistently seems to line up with stronger geomagnetic storms as compared to the Russell-McPherson effect that happens around the March equinox. Why? Don't know. But that's the deal. So during a solar maximum, and during the fall equinox, well, that's when the two combine. We're in both of those right now. And it's because of the tilt angle of the Earth. So during the equinox right here, these two, when Earth's tilt axis is effectively perpendicular to the Sun-Earth axis like that, you get this good connection from both poles to the solar wind. Whereas here during the summer, let's say, you get this one to connect very nicely, but this one's turned away. So just in general, Earth's magnetic field is like just a little bit more protected and shielded because it's not forming this nice, easy flow of energy. But here during the equinox, you get this flow of energy very nicely because the magnetic field connects very nicely from both the southern and the northern hemisphere. That occurs both during spring and autumn. And some of the just base stats of this right here. During the months around the equinox, Earth is more effective at extracting energy from space weather in general. So like right now, this solar wind structure is like 2 times stronger than normal and does have that southward component, but it's nothing crazy. It's nothing crazy, but we're in a G1 storm. Well, this is one reason why. During these months, 40% more energy is injected into Earth's magnetosphere, resulting in 2 times more geomagnetic storms during equinoxes and solstices, and that's just in general. And the Russell-McFerrin effect peaks slightly after each equinox. So the key month for that is basically October. Also, when the veil is thinner. And we have like the thing with 3-Eye Atlas and Swan and all the comets in October. So this year is going to be wild as it relates to that. Year of the snake, shedding the skin. Odd number solar cycles have increased geomagnetic activity during the first half of the solar cycle. I wrote this a while ago, but we are in solar cycle 25. And so we did have that really strong G5 Gannon storm, or the Mother's Day storm, which is May 10th to the 12th of last year, right? At the beginning of this solar cycle 25 maximum. Now we're at the second half of it, for sure. Electron fluxes are 3 to 12 times higher during equinoxes and solstices, and the entire Russell-McFerrin effect is further modified by energy stored in the magnetotail, which is variable and depends on other factors. So if we go back here, I actually didn't fully explain this. One of the reasons why this storm is strong is because we've been having all these solar flares, and that light radiation that hits the Earth charges the ionosphere. And the magnetic fluctuations that Earth experiences is primarily driven by these electric currents that are generated in the ionosphere. So there's magnetic fluctuations happening out the magnetopause or in the plasmasphere, 5 Earth radii out or so, right? They have some effect, but it's really, really strong electric currents flowing in the ionosphere, 50 kilometers up, 100 kilometers up, 300 kilometers up. Those telluric currents flowing there generate strong magnetic fields, and because their closeness to the surface, that's what generates these big field swings. And then that can start to interact with the geophysics of the planet, because they will induce telluric currents flowing through Earth's surface. And now you have, for example, volcanoes and earthquakes, and you get a big electrical surge passing through a fault or maybe through a magma chamber. What does that do? You know, most of the time it doesn't do anything because there's a certain level of like stamina to these things, you could say, where it can take it and then not necessarily just immediately blow up. But if things are at a critical stress, that is when these sort of geophysical dynamics can be that tipping point. They can be that final straw that breaks the camel's back. So most of the time, it's not. It's just daily life here on this planet. But for things that are at their critical stress, and then you get a really powerful electric current, perhaps traveling through a fracture zone that's like ready to go, maybe that's what finally gets it off. What we've been tracking on the channel for a long time now is exactly that. And we see time and time again, sometimes with big events, sometimes with small events, that we can relate it to the space weather, and it's not a big stretch, right? I'm not having to come up with some like diagram like this on the wall. It's pretty much like, oh, look at that, it happened, like exactly. So that's the thing, the Earth is a big place. So there's a lot of places that are at these critical stresses, and therefore we see the effects of these things. So we'll see what happens after this geomagnetic storm. We just had some big earthquakes. In general, we've been having big earthquakes. I don't expect anything crazy to happen, but I am looking at one area fairly closely. That is the Pacific Northwest. We do seem to be ramping up to something there. I'm going to make a dedicated video on this, but we've been getting some big earthquakes like magnitude 5.5, 5.8, 6 right in this zone. Over the past year, we had Mount Rainier do its biggest earthquake swarm in decades. Decades, that's the thing. I'm not sure if they told you that. Decades, biggest earthquake swarm in decades. So 1,100 events in about 2 weeks or so. And in general, it'll take like 2 decades to have 1,100 earthquakes at Mount Rainier. So like that is a big significant event. And then also we have our shield volcano here, which is Axial Mound, Axial Seamount. It is also getting ready to erupt. It looks like it's going to erupt this year or next year. So this whole area, right? If it was just one of these, you can kind of like brush it off. But this whole area is basically like ramping up. So we'll see what happens there. There are other places, of course. We've been having tons of earthquakes off the coast of Kamchatka. One thing that I reported on when it happened, I haven't been doing much reporting on now because there's been other things. But a lot of these volcanoes now are erupting. So whatever like dynamics exists there has basically started it up. If you remember, Krishenikov volcano, which was inactive for 600 years, started erupting like within a day or two after that big magnitude 8.8 megaquake. It's still erupting. It hasn't stopped. This was not just a 1 or 2 day eruption. It's still going. So you have Krishenikov, you have Klutchevskoy volcano. There's a whole bunch of volcanoes along this subduction arc on the Kamchatka Peninsula, and it is going wild. So we're having a lot of volcanic activity there, probably the most active zone in the world right now, though the biggest volcano, the Big Daddy, is of course Hawaii, which has been going through a lot of eruptive episodes as well with Kilauea, 33 now. So Hawaii has been, since December of last year, pumping it out, high radiative power. Really, I mean, I saw 2 of them, really, and I've been watching the live streams, really intense stuff. You can feel it on the island. The energies are incredibly strong. So that's another location. And then there's Indonesia is just absolutely nuts all the time. So there's a lot of places. You got the African super plume. We had some big earthquakes near Dauphin and Fontali volcanoes. I think it was early this year or maybe late last year, you know, past 12 months. And this is the African super plume. So that's some interesting activity there. Of course, the Earth is always doing things, but in general, volcanic activity just seems to be increasing kind of steadily as we move forward in 2025. And this has already been one of the most active years as it relates to earthquakes. So when we were talking about that back in spring, and people were saying, oh, there's no basis for this, or what are you talking about, or whatever. It's like, guess what? The moment that megaquake occurred, 6th strongest year ever for earthquakes on record in terms of our modern ability to observe these things. Now, we've only been observing them for a short period of time, human time scale versus geologic time scale. But still, one of the strongest years ever. And then we had the 7.9, or was it 7.8 rather, the 7.7, whole bunch of 7s, 6s. It's been a big year for earthquakes, and we're not done yet. So we could get more magnitude 7s. We could get another magnitude 8. I wouldn't rule it out. It's certainly possible. The question would be where. One location just of interest, not saying it's going to happen, but one location that is interesting is the Alpine Fault, because it has a pretty good 300-year recurrence interval, and it's at that 300-year mark. It last faulted, or ruptured rather, in 1717. Well, it's 2025. That's more than 300 years. So that could happen anytime in the next year, 20 years, maybe a little bit longer, 50 years. These recurrence intervals have some wiggle room, but 50 years is kind of outside that range. It's a pretty tight interval if you read the research. Some amazing geoscientists have collected that data based off of like lake sediments and more. So a lot of amazing people doing a lot of amazing work around the globe, also in analyzing what's happening in space and more, and we are thankful to all of them. And we don't take any of this data for granted. Here we have our sunspots, just to show you really quickly how we have this kind of rhythm. And I wish this kind of went further back, but you have like this, it's kind of like a 2-week rhythm. In terms of it goes up and then goes back down. We were starting to go down. Look now how that's changed, okay? So looks like the pattern has broken that we were in. We did get up to 200 back here end of August, We barely hit it, like almost hit it right there, but now we're going back up. So let's check out our sunspots. Let me load this up for you all. This is our 2-day intensitygram view of the sun, and we see huge flux emerging here and here at the same time. Check out how quickly that is going. I mean, especially right there, it like these two were going, and then this all of a sudden became the big sunspot grower, and then this one clicked online too. So at the end of this video, both of them now are like big sunspot groups. Yeah. So here we have that. Look at that group. Look at that group. This whole area in particular, look how that core is also growing. I mean, this is looking wild. And so this is already past Earth center and direct. Now, if it flares from the limb, we could get a radiation storm from that. You know, it's still in the zone. It could blast something our way in the next 24 hours. Unlikely to do so afterwards. But these guys, especially this one, still growing and soon to be Earth center and direct. And that's going to be right in that zone when we have 3i Atlas closest to Mars. So how does that relate to the sun? I'm not saying it does, but I just consider that like a synchronicity, right? I find it interesting that this interstellar object, which actually has a composition very similar to Mars based off its gas makeup in Mars' atmosphere, and you know, it's reddish before it started to turn green. Like, it has a lot of resonance with Mars, it seems. I find it interesting that 3i Atlas will be right next to Mars on October 3rd as closest, less than 0.2 astronomical units away. These guys are going to be right there. And one of my buddies who studies planetary resonances, he didn't give me any explanation why, but he identified October 3rd as a key date in his model. So I still hope to get him on to better dig into that. But October 3rd is looking a bit like an energy hotspot day, but we'll see. But yeah, we're getting prepared for that if that is the case. I mean, that is significant growth. That's also, as I just reported on the last video, this angle direction right here is exactly where R2 Swan is right now, that new comet that flew into the inner solar system. It's along the ecliptic plane right now. So, you know, this stuff starts to really add up and you start to wonder like what the heck is happening. Let me pull that up. So C2025 R2 Swan, and we have our 3D orbit viewer here. Let me also add in interstellar object 3i Atlas. And we'll talk about that. And then we're going to do our cosmic connection meditation. Look at the angle on that, right? This is 90 degrees right there. Something like that's 90 degrees. This is the Earth. Look at that angle. Those sunspots are exploding right where the Swan comet is. So I can go back here and I can turn this on. Watch how the moment we start to get in alignment with that comet, which has a super long tail, these start to go like crazy. So that tail, we go back to our display capture, that tail is stretching away from the sun, and it's 2.5 degrees long as viewed from Earth. The full moon, if it was out and you're looking at, it's 0.5 degrees. So that's just our kind of apparent size of it in the night sky. It's a super long, complex, dusty plasma, creating this effectively like a wire in interplanetary space that electricity can move along. And well, it makes sense that you get a lot of sunspots to form where you have this natural flow of energy going to the sun, because the sun is the biggest generator of electric field in our solar system. So if this is generating a big electric field as a result of that cometary tail filled with ice, dust, gas, and of course plasma, right? And the dust grains are all charged, then it's going to connect there. And it seems to be pulling magnetic flux out of the sun. That's pretty clear to me. You could debate this, but we see it time and time again with these comets. Shuchen-Shan, back in October last year, it did its flyby, its perihelion, I think it was October 3rd. Right around that time, we saw it on the chronograph scopes, and then guess what? We had our G5- storm on the 10th. We had a bunch of stuff launch our way. So you can look at a whole bunch of these comets and their flybys close in. The other thing to note, and they line up, it consistently happens again and again and again and again and again. So you have to like purposely like ignore the evidence to stick with the old model effectively. It just doesn't make sense to me. But I'm just one person. Who am I? But here we have the Swan comet. Look how close it is along the ecliptic plane too. it's staying right in this zone. It's not just doing a quick flyby like that. It came in, and it's right now perfectly along that ecliptic plane interacting with the solar wind. So the other thing to keep in mind too, here's another thing, is that the solar wind is more than just plasma, it's also dust. There's a tremendous amount of dust in interplanetary space, and therefore with the solar wind. And if there's dust in space, it typically will take on charge because it attracts these ions, whether negative, usually negative, but depending on the influence, if they can get photoionized off, then positive. So not only is the solar wind made up of plasma ions streaming off the sun, it's also made up of a bunch of dust. And here's the thing, we have all these comets right now in the inner solar system. We'll see how many I can get on the screen here, but there's quite a few. There's like 7 or more. So I think that's another one. Yeah, so this I'll stop there because these are kind of the main ones that we have right now. But all of these are bringing in a lot of energy and dust into our inner solar system. So that is another reason why I think this fall is going to be so dynamic as it relates to solar activity and geomagnetic activity and more. So yes, we are going to now do our cosmic connection meditation. Just want to show you quickly the X-ray flux for the past 7 days. And we see that ramped up. It's still high. So yeah, solar activity is increasing. The ionosphere is more charged. We're in a G1 storm and more. I do have a question here. I'll answer it really quickly because this is easy. Cacao or, yeah, hello. She's saying, what's an affordable telescope to observe what's happening in the sky? I'll show you right now. Because I just bought one myself. And I have limited experience with this, and this is not an endorsement because yesterday when I went out to get the sun, it failed to capture the sun. But this is my second time using it, so I'm still figuring it out. But the Sea Star, this is the S50, and so far it's been great, and you get really good photos with this. So I'm working to figure this out more. But I bought this for this fall because we're going to have a lot of visible eye comets, and I have good viewing conditions here, hopefully, and I want to be able to set it up and get these photos myself. So the Sea Star, yeah, not endorsement. I'm still learning to use it. Maybe in 2 weeks time, I'm like, this thing actually sucks. I don't know. I don't think that's going to be the case though. So let us do a cosmic connection meditation and we will get started with that. And it's been a while since I've done a meditation. I've been wanting to, just been too busy to do it, and they're best on a live stream in my opinion, and I haven't been able to do live streams because of the issues with the internet. So start to breathe deeply. You can place your hand on your belly, another on your chest, and you want 2/3 of your breath here from your diaphragm before your chest inflates. So we breathe unconsciously, though we are one of the few animals that has the ability to consciously breathe. And that's the thing. If our breathing patterns are not optimal, but they become unconscious, then you get stuck in a fight or flight sympathetic response. So by bringing conscious awareness to your breath and training it to breathe deeply, that can be really, really great. Okay. So close your eyes and start breathing. Feel the vibration. Not only of your body, but of the sun, the earth, the cosmos. Vibration is science. Frequency, sound, energy is true science. Spirituality, the common ground of existence. To learn the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Nikola Tesla. Resonate with the cosmos. Hertz. (528 hertz). 're in for a wild ride this October, everybody. So it is more important than ever to ground ourselves, to connect to these energies so we can ride them rather than being washed away by them. To go with the flow, to accept the gifts that the universe brings to us, the consciousness that the sun brings to us, brings to our awareness, and the gifts of abundance that the earth provides. All of them working together in harmony, allowing us to express ourselves to our fullest ability and to actually manifest our soul purpose life mission into reality, to help others, to help yourselves, to live a happy, blissful, self-actualized life. So these are all things that I believe. This is very important that we do, because we see how the earth is being run, and by large part by people that are not conscious of this, or if they are, they purposely don't want this rising consciousness wave. They rather seek us to be slaves. That's always been the case for thousands of years. And so it hasn't gone away. So now is the time, it's always the time to be liberated, self-actualized, in love, and working together cooperatively. So thank you all so much for watching today, for taking part in the Cosmic Connection meditation. I've been your host, Stefan Burns. I will be back with more videos. That's what we do here. We cover what's happening with the earth energetically by looking at all the things: volcanoes, earthquakes, Schumann resonances, and more. Solar activity, space weather, what's happening with the sun, the planets, also the cosmos. Consciousness. How is the field of consciousness changing in our local area? And how is that a microcosm for larger changes in consciousness beyond, even to the supergalactic cluster stage and perhaps at the God stage? This is an unknown. These are questions that we explore. So hope to see you here. Make sure to smash that like button. It just helps the channel grow and helps build a bigger resonance. The more of us that join together in resonance with this and other things, the more successful we can be in ushering in a beautiful new earth. So thank you all. Wishing each and every single one of you well. Please take care of yourselves. I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks so much.